Okay, in this second video, we're going to start looking at the actual infrastructure that I'm going to be covering in these videos. And what we're working up to is RStudio Cloud, which is a way of working and doing data analysis using the language R and doing it on the cloud. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's really optimal for us. But let's start with the language R. So when we're doing data analysis, at least in the social sciences and a lot of the natural sciences, your two big choices are R or Python. I'm going to use R in these examples only because it is a lot easier to build an infrastructure that is useful for you and for your students. Python is a really great language. It's used for lots of things. It has the advantage of being used for things other than data analysis. If you're doing web development, Python is a common language there. But playing with Python versions just gets you into the terminal and makes it much harder to create a consistent environment for yourself and your students. R, also used really commonly academically. It has very strong community support. That means there's lots of packages, lots of code you can draw on, lots of people you can ask for help. It has the disadvantage of one, really only being used for data analysis, and two, it does have an idiosyncratic syntax. So if you know, say, Python or JavaScript, there is a little more work to move over to R just because the syntax is a little bit different, but also not insurmountable by any means. So R you can install on your computer, it's free. And this is just basic R, and it's a console like your console, and I can type code. Building up off of the very simple language and console, almost everyone works inside the RStudio IDE. Again, this is free, you download it, it runs on your computer. The IDE gives me a nice area for saving files, running code kind of how I want to, seeing what all my variables are, loading data. This is a much nicer, much more modern way to do programming. And if you're working on your laptop or your desktop, I really recommend using RStudio. One better though is RStudio Cloud, and this is what I'm really going to be covering. And RStudio Cloud lets you set up a workspace, and in the next video I'll talk about how to use that for a project or for a class that you're running. But what's great about RStudio Cloud is this looks exactly like RStudio. If you know how to use RStudio, you know how to use Cloud. And if you know how to use Cloud, you know how to use RStudio, so your students can move back and forth really easily. This gives me everything that RStudio does. I can see my data, I can see what's going on here, and I can also run code here. So this is an example of what have come to be known as programming notebooks or coding notebooks. If you've ever heard of Jupyter notebooks, which are Python, this is the same thing. And when we're talking about literate programming, that's really what's relevant here, is that in a notebook, I can combine text and I can combine code and I can run the code right here. So I can run this code and read in my CSV. I can run this code and I see my data right there. And then the really wonderful thing is I can export this to a variety of formats. So if I hit knit here, it's going to produce a bunch of files, and one of the things that it can spit out is a PDF that is basically a report built on my code. So we'll talk in the next lesson about ways of using this strategically in your research or in your teaching. But this was just a quick run through of RStudio Cloud. Again, it's free. You sign up, you log in, you're taken to your workspace, you can create projects, and the next video we'll talk about specific strategies for how to create those projects.